Okay, hi, thanks for watching. Okay, in this video, this is actually a very important video. I want to talk about what I feel is a very important link between narcissism, cluster B, borderline, antisocial, all these things, all the cluster B, and addictions. Okay, I know a lot of people have kind of given me feedback that we shouldn't try to make too much of a connection, that there really is some important difference. And I agree there must be some difference. And, I know that a cluster B disorder is not an addiction exactly, but I still really want to press the similarities and really press, at least we should at least, as I think the science of psychology should at least try hard to rule out a lot of possible very, very close similarities between cluster B disorders and addiction. And I think even in the process of exploring the possibility, I think we can gain some insights that, even if there are some differences, I think the insights to be gained, even from the exploration of the similarities, I think could be very, very useful, at least in my case. And I come at this after a week where I've had kind of a tough week. I've had a lot of frustration. I've gotten angry a couple times this week. I've had a lot of work, been very busy, and all those things are kind of the worst medicine for me. When I get really excited, when I get really activated under a lot of pressure, there are times where I really start to lose my vision. I start to feel like a different person, and I start to feel honestly less human, really. And I think these are very important. These are important experiences that I think are very very typical with people who have cluster B. And I think even if it's unconscious, I think just the feeling that you're not human, I think it really does produce a lot of the compensatory behavior that we can see, and I see actually in a lot of drug addicts. Something I see in a lot of drug addicts. A really good resource is watching the video interviews on soft white underbelly. Okay, oftentimes when addicts are interviewed, they go to great pains to try to put little accents and emphasis on how something dignified about their life. I'm really good at I'm a really responsible person, and they kind of put these like emphasis on things that kind of make them seem more legitimate. And sometimes I wonder if maybe we should be sensitive as people. That when you get to the depths of addiction, that you're not going to feel like a human, and I don't think any of us are really going to honestly regard them. People who are very addicted, we don't really regard them as fully human. It's almost like you start to cross the line into kind of a zombie status, and it's interesting that the more you fall into that, the more there's this eagerness to try to put a little emphasis on any slight thing that might make you a little more legitimate. Like, oh, I'm a very good mother. It just comes out of the blue, and you're talking to somebody who's really down and out and really in a very dangerous kind of extreme level of addiction. So I think the same thing happens with psychopaths, antisocial, narcissistic. I think there's kind of a weird instinct to kind of overemphasize, qualities that make us seem legitimate. And I think part of that may just come out of an altered state where we really, like I have this week, you don't really feel fully human in some way, and I'd like to explore that. Now, what I'd like to really focus on in this particular video is when describing the mechanism of addiction, neuroscientists talk about the relationship between dopaminergic systems, dopamine systems, and serotonin systems. Okay, so you have the serotonergic, and the dopaminergic. Okay, and there's something unstable about the dopaminergic system in relation to the serotonergic system that really does mark some people as having more risk for addiction. Okay, and we can't avoid at the same time that I think the incidence of addiction for people with NPD is like really surprisingly high. Okay, so that can't be an accident. I mean, things are not just pure coincidence. And we shouldn't take it as a coincidence. So I wonder whether maybe some of the basic vulnerabilities that make someone more likely to become an addict might also mark vulnerabilities for a personality disorder. And I hope that, if there's any research out there, maybe we should take a closer look, or if anybody's, doing doctoral level research or, high level research in psychology, maybe to focus on seeing if there are some similarities in the dopaminergic, serotonergic systems that might be found, might that might be equally present in people with cluster B. Obviously, that would be hard to research because a lot of people with cluster B have major substance abuse issues. Okay, so it'll be hard to kind of piece out, sort of separate. You'd have to really study cluster B people that maybe are not using and maybe are not experiencing classical addictions, and then to really focus on those people and see if they show similarities. But anyway, just in terms of to have like a naive understanding of these systems. Basically, naively, neuroscientists describe the dopamine systems, the dopaminergic systems, as basically pleasure or gratification, pleasure or gratification systems. Okay, and so there's a lot of, when you have like a thrill or even like a fear or, something like getting in a fight or having an intense pleasure, sexual or on drugs or whatever. Those are all like spikes in the dopamine production. Okay. But what's really interesting, I think, is that even in rats, other mammals, it's been measured that there's sort of like an inverse relationship between the spikes and dopamine production and serotonin. So that, like when rats get in fights, you can actually measure that they get a spike of dopamine and their serotonin actually goes down. Okay, that's very important. Okay, so basically, not just humans, but just animals in general, there's kind of like, when you have things that cause a rise in the serotonin, in the dopamine, the serotonin will get for whatever reason, that they kind of work opposite each other. Okay, now my hunch, I guess, if me not being a scientist, if I had to guess from my own experience, I would guess that I myself am a person where that inverse relationship is very exaggerated. Okay, so that when I have like my own spikes of dopamine, I feel like whatever the balancing is of the serotonin, mine goes like plummets down to the floor, and that's unfortunate because that's destabilizing. And I think I'd like to kind of really explore that because I guess my hunch is that it's said that the dopamine is the pleasure, the gratification, the stimulation, the thrill, whereas the serotonin is more the happiness. Now, I don't know if maybe that's not my personal experience. Maybe for me, the serotonin is more just comfort, just feeling stable, just feeling comfortable, like not feeling like ants in your pants, like urgency. Is sort of the part of you that can sort of like endure the storms. So that for me, it's not so much a sense of happiness, but maybe it's more of a sense of well-being. Maybe that's a better way to put it, or just being, comfort in just being, just comfortable existence. So that when I have the spikes in the dopamine, I feel like I can almost feel the serotonin just bottoming out. And suddenly, if I don't get to have the pleasure or the thing that could be the exciting thing or the gratification, now suddenly I have this unbearable emptiness that I can't even stand just 3 minutes of just sitting and nothing happening. That is very interesting, and I think that is something I think drug addicts can relate to. Or any kind of addict. And I think that's something that people with cluster B can relate to. Okay, that sense of unbearable emptiness. And so you don't seek fulfillment, or you're not even in a place where you can seek fulfillment just in existence. Just being, listening to the wind, to the breeze, or nothing. Where you're always having to pursue some kind of gratification. Now, looking at, it's easy to see, like, say, in the antisocial, it's kind of behavioral, looking for stimulating behaviors, and everything else just kind of evaporates out of the picture, and it's just the behavior. So obviously, you lose the executive panorama, and then in the borderline, just the surge of all the emotional, the things that cause emotional distress, and that distress just floods out everything, and there's nothing to sort of there's not that baseline of just well-being to to act like as a shock absorber, or like a buffer to sort of moderate the emotion. So, and I think in all these disorders, what we see is really kind of a bottoming out of the serotonin, and sort of a kind of a peaking or spiking or elevation in the dopamine, whether for good or for bad. So so yeah, for me that's a really important relationship, and I guess I have to admit, like a person who has an addictive or an addictive profile. I think my profile also is that when my dopamine systems are stimulated for whatever reason, maybe I just maybe I think it's maybe genetic. I think my serotonin just plummets. And I think this is important for two reasons. Number one, I have no doubt that I experienced, abuse in my family, and there were a lot of, kind of unhealthy things in the environment of my family. But I think we need to be very careful that we may make a mistake in trying to attribute this weakness, this kind of like dynamic neurological condition, that this is just the result of a trauma. I think that that's a very cartoonish, kind of almost unfortunate way, and it's not to say we don't have our traumas, but but I think we also have to own that we may have certain neurological dynamics that are really even apart and separate from whatever traumas that we experience. Of course, I leave some open-mindedness that maybe being chronically exposed to a lot of kind of let's say chronic stress or chronic crisis in a family, that may kind of cause a chronic elevation and constant for the whole family in the dopamine, and that may have a way of just kind of chronically suppressing the serotonin. However, the thing is, in my case, I think my body naturally has a way that when the dopamine goes up, my serotonin just plummets. Okay. And I think that plummeting, that may just be an inherited characteristic. And that may even explain why there's so much abuse in the house in the first place, because maybe genetically the whole family has that kind of dynamic in their neurotransmitters. And that might be the reason why the atmosphere of the family is so abusive. So, I want to leave a little bit open on the issue of putting everything on the trauma. Not to say it doesn't exist. Trauma is something real, but I think we should also own that we may have maybe neurological temperament that is given to really dropping off the serotonin. And so taken from that point of view, um, while it's important to just have your talk therapy and be able to, express yourself with a therapist, I think we as people with cluster B, I think we have to look at ourselves kind of like people who have addictions, okay? And really confront the fact that maybe there's a whole part of us, a whole part of us, the part of us that could have that serotonin baseline, okay? That part of us is like deadened. It's so suppressed. It's almost like a part of us that doesn't even really exist a lot of times, or just in moments. And I think we, like addicts, we need to take responsibility maybe for confronting that, and not just developing honesty in our expression and whatever, but maybe we may also have to take it on like almost like an athlete, where we have to face conditioning ourselves, arranging our environment, our habits, our diet, our just our lifestyle to create a situation where we can develop and condition ourselves, maybe to kind of regulate a little bit through behavior, how much excitement and dopamine we're getting, so that we can maybe allow the serotonin system room to kind of come out and develop a part of us that really is kind of deadened. So it really is kind of the challenge of sort of awakening a dead part of us. In a sense, I say dead, this is a metaphor, but to awaken parts of us that have been really shut down. So that's my idea about the relationship between serotonin and dopamine, and how we do see similarities with addiction. Thanks.